Hello, vinyl community. I'm Gary, and this is Physical Format Rock and Roll. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, cheers. So, my good friend, one of my best friends, Mr. Chris Propfe, asked the question, what was the first metal record that you bought? So, first off, the term heavy metal is kind of open for interpretation, right? Um, People kind of argue what band is heavy metal and what's just hard rock, and I don't know, it's all kind of mixed together sometimes. But probably the very first few bands that I was into was Kiss, Aerosmith, and Rush that I can kind of remember. And I don't know, some people consider Rush, early Rush, heavy metal, some don't. So I'm going to go with what is considered traditional heavy metal. I'm going to show two albums, kind of like Chris did. I'll explain why. So the first one that I got was the debut from Black Sabbath. We all know this album. It's a classic, known as one of the better debuts of all time, and also has some of the most well-known cover art there. Now, the thing about this is I was actually given this. I had it on 8-track as a kid. I was either in 6th or 7th grade. My mom had actually went to a yard sale and she picked up a couple of 8-tracks. She just went by the name, because a friend of hers was having a yard sale, so she felt like she had to buy something. I'm kind of surprised that one of the ones she picked was Black Sabbath, because at that time she was still, not sure about me listening to all this rock and roll and stuff that I was getting into as a young kid. But she picked up Black Sabbath and Grand Funk Railroad, 8-tracks. So I was listening to the Black Sabbath. It sounded different than the other things I was listening to at the time. It was taking me a while to warm up with some of it. Others, parts of it I liked right away. Of course, it was very cool starting out with the whole thunderstorm and everything and all that. But the thing about it was, I feel like I didn't have that 8-track that long before it broke. If any of you can remember back to 8-tracks, sometimes the tape would just break on them. So I lost that not too long after I had it. But a lot of these songs kind of stuck in my head for years. Of course, you got to remember, I'm getting into all kinds of, more music all the time. But some of these songs stuck into my head, but it took me many years, actually, before I ended up getting this again. The next Black Sabbath album that I would actually get was when Dio was in the band. None of my friends really were into Black Sabbath at that time, and it's, the places where I was buying records, I didn't really see too many Black Sabbath albums. So, but that was the first one. And like I said, some of those songs, it's funny because the things that stuck in my head were parts of The Wizard and stuff off in the second side, as opposed to like, NIB and the Black Sabbath song itself. But then the first one I bought on my own would be British Steel by Judas Priest. Now, when I bought this, a friend of mine, I can't remember if I was a freshman, I think, around that time. Somebody that I was friends with in school, kind of one of the cool guys, said, oh yeah, you got to check out Judas Priest. So this was their new album. And actually, when I saw the cover, I kind of thought this was more like a punk rock kind of thing, more than I did heavy metal. And I also didn't know at the time, I didn't know anything by Judas Priest. So I knew nothing of all the terrific albums that they'd had before that, and that the albums they had before that, for the most part, were heavier than this one. But I do remember getting this. I actually had this on 8-track also. It's when 8-tracks were phasing out. But I bought this, and I remember the sound of it. It was so cool. It had it was recorded so well, had such a sound like you were in the room kind of thing. And some of the songs on here, like Metal Gods and Grinder and Rapid Fire, to me, those were like, heavy metal kind of songs. So it was very, different than some of the other music that I was listening to. And I knew it was a different genre. And, from this, that led to, you know, Iron Maiden Killers and more Judas Priest and then Black Sabbath and, some things like that. But I mean, for me, heavy metal is always traditional heavy metal. But those albums will always have a special place in my heart. Probably neither one of them is my favorite album by either of those artists, but I will always love them. So there you go, Chris and everybody else. Those were my first metal albums. Curious what some of yours are. Thank you for taking the time to watch. I always appreciate it. Till the next time, my friends, I will see you down the road.